Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, no matter where you are, whenever you're watching this. This is Floating in Dreams, and today we are going to be doing a top 5, bottom 5 with the Urban Decay Naked palettes. Welcome to everybody watching today. Thank you so very much for joining me. Today we are going to be chatting about which Naked palettes I think are like top of the line and which ones I think are a bit so-so. I thought there were 10. Turns out there's 11 if we also count the Naked Reloaded, so I'm going to sort of talk about all of those palettes in a bit. And I just thought that since it's eyeshadow palette month on my channel, we could also do a bit of a throwback. I know not everybody loves Urban Decay Naked eyeshadow palettes, but since they were some of the first high-end palettes I ever bought, I still have a soft spot for these and I hold them near and dear to my heart. I did a video like this a couple of years ago, but since then we've seen some new Naked palettes being released. So I thought, let's do this again to show you which ones I still love. Maybe my preferences have changed, who knows? Maybe some of these newer palettes have booted some of my OG favorites down the list, who knows? So that's what we're going to be doing in today's video. In case you're unfamiliar with the channel, hi, my name is Maaike. I live in the Netherlands. I like to come on here to chat about eyeshadow palettes, which is why we're doing eyeshadow palette month today. And I love chatting about Essence and Catrice reviews and getting the use out of my makeup. So any of the eyeshadow palettes that I'm chatting about in any of these videos, unless they are new to me, have been tried and true. They've been put to the test. I have reviews up with all of these things over on my blog. So make sure to check out that link down below, because if you just search for the palette, you can find all the swatches and everything. And everybody who's been watching me for a while may know that because I have fair skin with a cool to neutral undertone, I deem myself a snow angel. And if you are also a snow angel, or if you would just like to join the Snow Angel Club, then definitely check out the subscribe button down below, click it, and join my little family on here. So yeah, Urban Decay Naked palettes are some of the OG palettes. In case you are not on point with your makeup history, you should know that Urban Decay Naked 1 was probably the first eyeshadow palette that was pre-made that was a larger 12 pan palette. Before that, it was singles, maybe something as big as a quintet, and like every rendition in between. But the only people who were really using palettes were makeup artists who had their own pre-made like custom palettes with singles inside it, so single pans. So Urban Decay coming out with this 12 pan neutral palette that was like great for every day. You can do all these different looks. As a concept, really instigated the market for these eyeshadow palettes. And I remember actually years ago when I first started watching Lisa Eldridge, I watched one of her videos and she mentioned how she doesn't see, or at least at the time, she didn't see actual makeup artists using these kind of palettes, that they're very much aimed at regular consumers. So I thought that that was an interesting point as well. And of course by now, I mean, I'm currently doing a full month of eyeshadow palette related content. So we've come a long way since then. So I've got all Naked palettes that were ever released. I bought every single one of them. I still blindly purchase one when it comes out because I like trying them out. And of course by now, are they still Naked palettes? I'm not entirely sure. Urban Decay is kind of beating a dead horse there. And there is one in the top 5, bottom 5 that doesn't quite fit, that I also don't really feel fits with the family, and that's the Naked Reloaded. This is supposed to be the replacement of the Naked one. They discontinued that, and then they sort of promoted this as being the replacement for it. But I felt, also because it has the different packaging, like it's much slimmer. Like if I take another one, like, do you just see? It's just completely different packaging. It's this cheap feeling fabric packaging. And then inside it, the colors are like more updated than, you know, some of the colors were in the Naked one. But I thought, why are you getting rid of a good thing? And I think that that's the case with a lot of makeup products. Like, trends change and then brands try to change along with it. But sometimes it's also just good to keep an old staple around, you know? I think that if they had kept the Naked one around, a lot of people would actually love it still. This doesn't hold a candle to the original Naked one in my opinion, and it's quite similar to the ABH Sultry. So if you have that palette, because it also has this like peachy shade, it's a bit like Bloom in the Sultry, and then a little bit like cooler tones, which I appreciated, but for me in the end, there were really just like these shades I really liked, but I didn't really go into this peachy side all that much. So for me, the Urban Decay Naked Reloaded kind of like really missed the mark. So that's why we're not putting it in the top 5, bottom 5. As with all of my top 5, bottom 5 videos, I'd like to start with the bottom 5 first, so we can end the video on a high note. And let's just get right to it. One of my least favorite Naked palettes is the original Naked. This is years old. It still feels fine, smells fine. I could still use this, but I decluttered this ages ago because I felt this color story wasn't quite right for me. Like in terms of a crease shade, I do get this, so that kind of works. But you can just see how few dents this has, and it's even older than my Naked 2. And that has actual dents in it because I use that a lot more. That's not going to be in the bottom 5. Don't worry, don't worry. But yeah, these shades, it just always turned like bronzy brown on me. So for me, with my cooler undertone, I really only have these like gray shades, and I don't love grays on myself. So for me, this could have had just a little less warmth. Like in terms of a neutral palette, it's a good neutral palette, but I think it's not very fair skin friendly. It goes quite deep, and also the lighter shades are quite deep and yellow toned as well. So that's why for me, this was never quite perfect. So that's why the Naked one has to go into the bottom 5. Now another older Naked palette that has not been around for a while is a Naked Smoky. This has been in my bottom 5 before, I'm sure. This is actually a really good palette. I did rediscover this a couple of years ago when I started using it around the holiday season, and I was able to pull some really stunning looks out of it. But I've always felt that these two mattes, like it goes from super light to super dark and there's no jump. Can I fuse these together? Like, can I mix them to create a custom shade that does work in my crease? Sure I can, but the only reason I've always kept it around is these blue tone grays that we get sort of here. Those are really great for an actual smoky eye against my fair skin. That's the only thing I do with this palette, and the only thing I truly like. Some of the shimmers in here are quite flaky. It's that OG flaky shimmer Naked Urban Decay eyeshadow quality, which I also didn't love. And I just feel some of these shades also popped up in later Vice palettes, or like some other palettes that I have that were limited edition. So I don't necessarily need this anymore, but I do keep it in my collection because those blue tone grays are some of the best blue tone grays I have in my collection. My least favorite Naked palette, quite possibly, also since discontinued from the collection, not something I reach for. This is the Naked Cherry. Lovely take on, like this is the Urban Decay take on a berry palette, but I have other berry toned eyeshadow palettes that I feel work for me a little bit better. And for me, that has to do with the fact that all the neutral shades you get in here are peach. I wish that this didn't have so many peachy tones and then the berries. There are a couple of pretty berry shades in here. Don't get me wrong. I can do some stunning looks with this. I really appreciated, was it here? Young Love? That's a shade I really like. But in the end, I just didn't really feel like going back to this time and time again. It pulls a little bit too pinky. It can make my eyes look a little bit too much like I've got an eye disease, which I also didn't love. So this for me was a bit of a miss. What wasn't a miss, but that was a miss for a lot of people, was the Naked Cyber. I'm still putting it in the top, or in the bottom 5 rather than the top 5, because I don't feel it is that wowing enough to, like the other 5 I just love more, but I didn't dislike this as much as so many other people. So Naked Cyber was kind of just, again, mispromoted. It looked, Urban Decay tried to hype this up as a duochrome palette, which it just isn't. It's just a palette with a lot of very fair, like very light, sheer shimmering shades. It really reminds me of the kind of makeup you used to be able to get in the early 2000s. When I was a teenager and I went clubbing for the first time, these were the kind of shimmers we put from like lid to brow bone. Like that was the look, yeah? That was like early 2000s makeup for me. So it really reminds me of that. So maybe again, nostalgia. I thought I wasn't going to like this very orange shade, which is the darkest shade in the palette, but you know, it's just incredibly fair, which against my complexion works really well. I can see why people don't like this. I really do. But once I started using this and the looks I was able to do with it, I ended up really not disliking it a whole lot. Are there other Naked palettes that I like more? Yes. Is this the best eyeshadow palette on the planet? No. But did it deserve the hate it got? I don't think so. And then this may surprise you. Don't come for me. Don't come for me. Urban Decay Naked 3 was one of my top favorite eyeshadow palettes for years, like for more than a decade. Together with the Naked 2, which you will be seeing in a minute. But the Naked 3 has sort of lost its luster for me finally after so many years. Are there still shades in here that I love? Yes. This is perfectly cool toned, a little bit ashy leaning. So against my fair skin, which was actually the critique a lot of people had of this palette, it works beautifully. It's just that I like the Natasha Denona Mini Retro. No, not the Mini Retro. It's just that I like the Natasha Denona Retro and the Huda Beauty Rose Quartz a little bit better than this in terms of formula by now. But I do have to say I need both of those palettes to replace this one palette for me, because I feel this has the cool tones and like the very light shades of the Huda Beauty, but it does have some of the definition and some of the shimmering qualities that the Natasha Denona has. So for me to be able to do the kind of looks that I can do with this, I needed two palettes to replace it. So it's still a good palette in my book. It's just that when I look at everything else that I now have in my Naked palette collection, this is just no longer a favorite. I would still go into this for mugshot for sure. And I actually have a plan, hear me out, but I may want to fuse my old Naked 2 and Naked 3 together to create a new palette. And I'm still on the fence. Do I want to do this now? Or do I first want to buy a backup of the Naked 3 to have an original one? But I'm not sure if that's going to be a waste of money. So let me know your take on that in a comment down below. On that note, with the Naked 3 being dethroned from being a top favorite Naked palette, I still have 5 left, and I don't think you can still buy any of these. I feel like the Naked palettes that were the best are the ones they only kept around for a hot minute. Let me just show you the Naked 2. So, because that is still one of my favorite palettes of all time. Again, it's starting to perhaps not be the best cool tone palette I have anymore in my collection, which is why I'm like, maybe I should just fuse it together with some of the cool tones from the Naked 3 and like put it in this packaging and just have like all of my perfect cool tone shades in one go. And then do like a pan that eyeshadow palette with it next year. That's sort of like the idea that I'm playing around with, because I do have a backup of this because I couldn't live without it. I just knew it. Here you can see we've got dents. We've got clear dents in some of these shades, especially here, YDK, that's the shade I live for. I also really like Suspect and Chopper and Verve, and like some of these shades are just perfect. The only thing I didn't love about this is that these two shades here are quite yellow toned, so I would never really use those, and I also don't really use black. So for me, this is the palette, kind of. So yeah, this has been one of my favorite cool tone palettes of all time. I still like it. I still reach for this if I want to do something super basic and I don't know what to do. But by now, I think I have other cool tone palettes that I might just like a little bit better. That's a very tough thing to say. But I do think there are more updated formulas, even though I still hold this one near and dear to my heart. Maybe an unexpected one, because I think this one was in like a bottom 5 section before. And it's the Urban Decay Naked Heat. I was just looking at all of these things right now and I was like, you know what? This palette deserved every bit of hype it got when it was released. It was a little late to the party. The warm tone train had left the building for like a long time before this actually was released. So they were a little late, and it just has some really stunning reddish tones. These are warm tones that I can make work. It's a bit mustardy here, but nothing is too orange, which oranges just don't look great on me. So I've always felt that this looked great, and especially this shimmer I like. Do I wear this a whole lot? No, but I feel that in the summertime, when I want to go for that super warm toned eye, this would be one of my picks for sure to keep around. But another good warm tone palette that they did was the Naked Wild West. Again, not something that they had around for a while, but they're now doing it as a mini, I believe, so you can still get some of these shades for sure. But what I appreciated here is that we do get some cool tones in here. They're quite gray tone, but they are, like, this is a bit more taupey leaning, so I like that. We get these greeny teal shades that really amp it up a little bit, and nothing is too peachy. And to me, this was like a good updated version of the Colourpop Dream Street, which they did with Kathleen Lights, which was discontinued as well. But this color story gives me the same vibes, and because of this palette, I was able to pull apart my Dream Street and only keep the teal shades. But yeah, it's got some really stunning shimmers in here. I really like this one. You can do a very neutral, basic eye with it. You can make it more saturated, more warm toned, but you know, if you leave out that very fiery shade, then it's quite a neutral palette with a pop of teal, and that's what I like. So for me, this was much more successful than some of the other ones. And then another more of the colorful options that they did, the Naked Ultraviolet. This is actually one of my favorite purple palettes. My favorite is the Violette Étendue from Viseart, because I feel that has more neutral shades. This is again a little bit too peachy leaning for my taste. It's not as peachy toned as the Naked Cherry though. This works a little bit better on me, mainly because they are lighter and because this shimmer has a bit of a green flip, which is why it works for me and why it works together with these purples, which is really important. I love how I can do a full-on purple look with this, I can do a full-on neutral look, or I can mix and match the two sides. These purple shades are quite cool toned, which is why I like it, because cool tone purples look a lot better on me. We get a couple of these like black light kind of shades with which are purples with a blue flip, which is my kind of purple, my favorite purple to wear. We do get a deep shade here that is deep enough. It does have shimmer, but I don't mind fluffing something like that in the crease or using it as a liner, because that's the only way I use deep shades anyways. And then this shade is really pretty too. So I feel we get enough here. We get a couple of textures to play around with. It's just a fun palette that can give you a lot if you play around with it and really familiarize yourself with the color story. But I think the favorite Naked palette right now that I really think that, again, why did they discontinue this? The Naked Honey. I think that this is one of the best ones, and again, you get two yellow tones in the middle, but if you cover those up, you can just see that it's actually quite warm toned neutrals, and these are mustardy browns. Again, I don't understand why this is called the Naked Honey, because it should have been called the Naked Mustard. That would have made a lot more sense. But these are some really stunning shades. When I use these, they look like neutral shades on me. I love that this has a bit of a green undertone, which I really appreciate. We get a dark brown as our deepest shade, which I love. I'm not a big fan of blacks. So in terms of a neutral palette that gives me what I need, the Naked Honey is probably the best one, and still one of the most naked options that they did. And those were all of the Urban Decay Naked palettes that I wanted to chat to you about. Please thumbs up the video if you liked it. Leave a comment down below with your favorite Naked palette, because I'm very curious to know. Subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more by me. I'm currently in the midst of doing eyeshadow palette month, but I regularly do eyeshadow palette related content as well. So I hope you'd like to stay around for more, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!